A few days ago, somebody tweeted the picture of his little girl to one of these NPR journalists and told her that, yes, my little girl wants to be a reporter, wants to be a journalist, and I'm going to send her to intern for you in a few years. Now the little girl was like 10 or 11 years old. This is an open letter to that little girl who wants to be a journalist. Here's the thing, little girl. A few years ago, when Stephen Colbert, the comedian, had his old show, which was the Colbert Report, he started interviewing, as a comedian, he started interviewing some politicians. None of the Republicans would show up, or very few Republicans would show up to get interviewed by him. So he started with Democratic politicians, which supposedly are the more intelligent ones, and those who are, supposedly know their subject better, know their subjects better. And what happened first, and he didn't go reach for the top. He didn't start from the higher level Democratic politician. He reached for the bottom. He started from the lower levels of Democratic Party leadership in the House of Representatives. There's like 200-300 of them. So let's start from A, B, C, D. Let's work our way down the line. And he brought them. He started interviewing them, and just regular, the kind of question that anybody in that situation wants to ask these guys who are supposed to know stuff, because they're in position of leadership in this called democratic system. They need to know stuff. They need to be on top of their game. They should be very intelligent, very well read, very educated, and knowing shit, interested in knowing shit. After, 10, 12 of these interviews, edict came down from the democratic leadership that nobody should give Stephen Colbert interview in our party anymore. Period. Nobody should give interviews to Stephen Colbert. Even the lowly ones in the House of Representatives who, represent a couple of 100,000 to a couple of million people. And you're wondering, what happened? Well, what happened is that the comedian was doing the journalist's job. And nobody was used to this. Nobody was used to, being asked the kind of question that, you expect an intelligent representative to know the answers to. What they call tough questions, or and in somewhere else they call it gotcha questions. Sort of like, if you're a politician, if you're a person in power, and this person is a reporter, a journalist, every question must be a gotcha question, because the objective is not to have a pillow fight. The objective is to know what you know, to see if you have made the right decision based on available knowledge. But if you don't have the knowledge, or your thought process is wrong, the reporter should actually, bring that shit out so everybody can see that you either don't have the knowledge, or you have the knowledge but your thought process is wrong, that you have made such a decision in the past. So the system can, clean you out, bring somebody else in who, has more information and can make better decision based on the available information. But no. Instead of, letting the stupid fall and bringing more intelligence into the system, the system says, no, we don't want the people to know that we have stupid people representing them. Here's the thing, little girl. What you have today as journalists are, given a job by these corporations, even NPR and PBS, these are not journalists. These are, at best, models and mannequins, and at worst, they're, flower pots and prostitutes. They were never meant to ask hard questions, to ask real questions. Corporations don't hire them to actually investigate anything. What you see and what you hear on TV and on radio, especially in NATO countries, in the the pink skin world, is these people are not journalists. Who they represent, who present themselves as journalists, they're not real journalists. They are props. They're props. So the politician can, get his talking points out with the help of these props. It's sort of like literally, we're talking about literal talking dolls. These Muppets, these journalists are literally Muppets. The politician want this Muppet to ask a certain question so the politician can, get out his talking point, and he expects this Muppet to ask a specific question so the politician can get out his talking point. If this doesn't happen, the politician will no longer give interview to this particular reporter. And then you end up in this particular journalist, reporter, whatever the fuck you want to call these flower pots. It reminds me, and then the reporters, these journalists, start, competing with each other that who can throw the softest serves, who can throw the softest balls, who can have a much more relaxing and much more pleasing pillow fight with a fucking politician. This is what the competition becomes. Not who can ask the toughest question, who can ask the most real question, most important question, but who can ask the, throw the softest ball. Who can, please the politician better. It reminds me of another joke in which, specifically in Uncle Sam's land, the states start, in order to please the corporation, they start and entice the corporations into moving into their state. They start reducing the corporate taxes in their own states, giving these corporations more and more incentives, so these corporations would actually move into their state. And this becomes a competition between 50 different states, that who can, please this corporation more, who can give them more breaks and more, tax breaks and more free stuff, to please these motherfuckers to come to them instead of going to other. This concept of trying to please the corporation reminds me of the reporters trying to please the politician. they're trying to outdo each other. The states are trying to outdo each other in order to see who can give a better blowjob to these corporations, so these corporations can bring some jobs to their states, and these journalists are in competition with each other, have been forced to compete with each other as to see who can give a better blowjob to these politicians, who can blow these politicians better. So again, it's a matter of money. So which one can get a next interview with the same politician? Because if you interview a politician, you give some real question to a politician once, next time the politician is not going to want to have an interview with you. Well, so it becomes a race into who can suck off the politician better. The journalist's job didn't start as sucking off politicians. It started off as confronting politicians, bringing out the truth. Now it has ended up as sucking off politicians. The corporation's job was to provide work and provide goods for the people. Now the people, the states, the people are sucking off corporations so they can provide work. It's sort of like the corporations were built to serve the people. Now the people are forced to serve the corporations. The politicians were supposed to serve the people. Now the people have been forced to serve the politicians. The politicians were meant to be questioned and pressured by the journalists. Now the journalists are forced to suck off the politicians if they want to make a living in that business, if they want to make their rent, their mortgage. And the corporations who own these media companies, who own these journalists, are they don't beat around the bush. They say, hey, if you can't get interviews, we don't need you. And how can you get interviews if you treat the politician nicer than your competition? So it becomes a competition between these journalists who can treat the politician nicer, who can ask less consequential questions. This job is no longer a job. Therefore, the journalism is no longer journalism. It's a model business, mannequin business, who can be a better prop, therefore the people who hire these journalists no longer look at them as, okay, how much do you know, how much do you want to know, how much intellect do you have, no. So famously, Mr. Roger Ailes told these women who wanted to work for him to twirl around, because the objective is no longer to see who's more intellectual. It's about who's got a better ass, who's got better tits, and who's got better legs, and that's about it. And in men, who's handsome and presentable with good manners. That's about it. That's the qualification of the fucking journalist today. Who's handsome, presentable, with good manners, who behaves well on a leash. This is the qualification of the journalist today. This is the qualifications that that the media owners are looking to hire. Which person is more trainable, can be domesticated better. That makes a good journalist in today's age. Who can be more domesticated more easily? These are not journalists. as I said, my little girl, if you like what the job that these folks are doing today as journalists, you might as well just, look up secretarial work. Look for secretarial work, because again, the people who hire these journalists are looking for qualities that 50 years ago or 30 years ago or even today, they're looking for qualities that in general bosses look for when they want to hire a secretary. Bosses look for, when they want to hire a secretary, man or woman, they're mostly looking for if he can talk, if he has good manners, if he's presentable. They're not looking for, somebody with some intellect who's, is willing to ask them tough questions, because they don't need that in a secretary. They don't need a secretary that is pain in the ass. They just don't. They need a secretary who can suck a cock, not ask tough questions of them, of the boss. This is exactly the secretarial qualifications, personal assistant qualifications, are the same qualifications that the media corporations are looking for when they hire a journalist in the year 2022. End of story. End of story. Therefore, you have, even a comedian, when he steps out of line and asks a few tough questions, even the Democratic Party says, nope, 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 no more interviews for him. And they get away with it. No more interviews. It's sort of like saying that again, the old saying, if the king is naked, we are not going to talk about it. The king without clothes. If he's naked, we're not going to talk. If the politician is stupid and uninformed, no problem. We just don't tell him not to give any interviews. Then he's not a fucking politician. He's a doorstop. And this is the kind of democracy they want to export to the rest of the planet. Have George W. Bush, Trump, and Reagan as president all over the world. Bunch of D and C students with little knowledge and less intellect. Because they haven't been asked real questions. Because their journalists want to keep their jobs. Yeah, little girl, you are. It would be much more. You would be much more happy doing actual secretarial work, because in actual secretarial work, what you're signing up for. But in journalism today, what you sign up for, you think you're signing up to be a journalist, but they expect you to be a cocksucker. And if you're not, you don't do a good job at sucking cock.
If you are a regular listener to this broadcast,
and getting interviews, in other words, sucking cock and getting good interviews. If you're not good at that, they will put you aside, and they would hire somebody who is better at, sucking cock. That's today's journalist.